Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
Hey there folks, welcome back to the summer series of the Property Couch, and Ben, the same invitation goes to you. Welcome back to the Property Couch.
Loving the summer series, loving it.
So good. The theme of the summer series is very, very simple, Ben. We're showcasing people who have knowledge become empowering to them, but only if they were prepared to act on it, Ben. So that's the theme.
These are people who are in flow, Bryce, when it comes to their money management and who are making a difference, moving the dial in regards to their personal financial position.
Now we want to say a special thanks to the STIG, because when we set up the summer series, Ben, we were trying to showcase people who have acted on it in different demographics, different sort of
stages of life,
profiles, and she did a very awesome job of pulling that together. And Keno, who is our guest today.
Special guest, yes.
All very special guest, Ben.
Love it.
As part of the summer series. It was a terrific interview.
Hey Bryce, before we get on to our very special guest this week, just an update in regards to our property investors who have property in Queensland. Very, very important, right? So the government is calling on some submissions or surveys. So there's some surveys on the government website in regards to the reform process for renting in Queensland. So what we've done in the show notes is will be some links to get you to the right page, because it's a little bit convoluted in terms of how to get there. And also for our members at Picker, on the Picker website, we'll also have details there, as well as our notes around what to write for the submission. But interestingly, Bryce...
Yeah, why is this important, Ben?
It's super important because obviously we're trying to ensure that we protect the interest and get the balance right. So we welcome reform, but there's obviously some reforms in Queensland which are relatively consistent to Victoria, which we're very, very concerned about. So we want you to take the survey, okay, and also put your submission in. Now, there's a couple of ways in which you can put submissions in. You can register for an account with Queensland, which is a little bit convoluted, so you can't upload a Word submission, but you can also print off the Word submission and then post it through the good old PO box, through the old snail mail, Bryce.
Remember that?
Not sure why they can't upload the submissions, but anyway, that's what you need to do. So
make us more determined to get it done. More
details in the show notes, but this is super important. In Victoria, we now have no 120-day no reason clause in terms of for moving a tenant on, and that's obviously very concerning. In New South Wales, they kept that as part of their ongoing legislation. Queensland's proposing to axe that as well. So we want to make sure that we get the balance right, and we don't think that that gets the balance right. So there's a few issues we have with the new proposals of reforms for tenancy in Queensland, as I'm wearing my Pickers hat. So please check out our show notes, go on to the Property Couch, get the details, or become a member of Picker, because a united voice, you know, as we grow and grow and grow, we'll get a seat at the table so we get the right balance of reforms in the state of Queensland. Submissions have to be in by the 28th of December. Oh, it's interesting how they make it so difficult right at the festive season. I mean, you know, property investors, we need to hear your voice. So 28th of December to get your submission in for the new reform process as part of renting in Queensland. So thank you very much for allowing my little public announcement here, Bryce.
No problem.
Before we get to our very special guest,
mate, very, very important notice. But mate, let's get stuck into the summer series and let's cut to our interview with today's very special guest. So Keno, thanks for joining us here today. Give us a little bit of your backstory, financially and what you do professionally.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for having me as well. So a bit of backstory, I guess. So I'm Filipino background. I actually was born and raised in the Philippines and spent most of my 12 years there. You could say I was in a working class family. Both my mom and dad were teachers. Mom sort of went on a tangent and went on a different career path, whereas dad sort of went to that teaching career path. I ended up becoming a dean at a university department. So done pretty well. I've got 2 siblings, an older brother and younger sister. I guess in terms of the money piece and discussion, I haven't really thought about, talked about it during my younger years. I think it was only time when we migrated to Australia. I think that's back in 2001 when I was 12. So, reflecting back on it, it was a quite, I guess you could say, a journey. And that's probably the reason and the most important bit in terms of how I found out the importance of money. So, it was already tough for us to move from a country where we've already established ourselves and having a lot of friends. It was already hard for my mom and dad. It was, back when I was thinking about it, my brother and I were year 6 and year 8, so we already established friends. So for us, we're like, why are we leaving, Philippines? Why are we leaving our friends? Why are you doing this? But in hindsight, if you think about it, my mom and dad really built their careers around there, really built that foundation. And for them to leave that behind for our future growth was, I guess, something I've never thought about. Now, coming back to really the most important bit as reflecting back was money was very hard for us coming to Australia. So I still remember when I remember dad was telling that mom was crying every night. And she was saying that, we made a big mistake. We should go back. Because every night my mom would count money. We had money left because, we were scrounging. Dad was finding it hard to find a job. Mom as well. She, even though they were qualified teachers, for their qualification here in Australia, it was kind of irrelevant, you could say. And going to high school here in Australia, I still remember mum would pack us lunch and she would give us 50 cents for pocket money. Now, 50 cents back in the day isn't really much. And I still remember mum was like, just hold off to it and then just build whatever it is in terms of what you want to buy and then buy it then. And I still remember in the canteen, there was $3 M&Ms. And 50 cents won't get you much, but you had to work backwards. $3, 50 cents, that's 6 days. Yeah. 6 days you have to really delay that gratification piece and really say, okay, I've got 50 cents and I've got $2 and $3 and then I can buy my M&Ms. And I think that's really where it felt the foundation of delayed gratification. Now, by no means, it was a subconscious thing for me. It wasn't really after, thinking about what money is, in the past 2 years or so, that I found the importance of that. And throughout, I'd say the 18 years I've been here in Australia, I've had many shifting mindsets, and I wouldn't be where I am today without those mindsets.
How has that served you, would you say, like in your daily, to know that delayed gratifications? How has that served you now as a 30-year-old?
Well, it's very different now in this generation where you got your Instagrams, your Afterpays. It's quite a different financial mindset nowadays. So you could literally get any item you want. So that delayed gratification piece was very important, especially that I've come off a sabbatical as well. So I've come off a 6-month sabbatical, and not only did I do it, my wife did it as well. Nice. So my background is I'm a chartered accountant. So, numbers, I live and breathe it. And same with my wife, which is a chartered accountant as well. So it made it a bit easier in terms of that money piece and delayed gratification piece. So I guess a bit of context to that sabbatical as well was that, we've already planned it. And there was a turning point in my career back in May of 18 where I said, okay, I'm a bit burnt out. I don't really know what to do. Is this the industry that I want to work on? And I've actually spoken to my mentor at that time and said, hey, I don't know if this is meant for me. I don't really know if I want to do this. And then she was like, okay, well, we've got an opportunity for you to go up in the Blue Mountains. I'm like, Blue Mountains, are you crazy? Well, what would I do up there? And she's like, oh, we've got a client there. and they want you to help them. I'm like, I mean, I'm human, I'm a creature of habit. I don't like any changes within my routine. I come in at 8, leave at 6. That was my routine for the past 7 years. And for that to happen, it was just like, whoa, hold on. You're asking me to drive 2 hours back and forth. I mean, in hindsight now, that opportunity really led to where I'm at mindset wise. And that's the reason why I actually was brought into the couch. So I was just like, okay, what am I going to pass my time while driving? What's the best way to do that? I can't really read a book. I can't do anything much. So I'll Google. And during that time, I was actually planning my wedding, my wife, and money was an important thing because we wanted to ensure that when we planned the wedding, we paid it ourselves. We didn't want anyone to help us. And the reason for that is many factors. My mom's got a mortgage. Her parents got a mortgage. So we're like, let us do it ourselves. So I think coming back to that, okay, what do I want to do? So I said, okay, I'm looking for a property. I want to learn how to manage money properly now. And here I am, Property Couch. I Googled it and I said, okay, let's give these guys a try. And usually I get pretty bored pretty quickly. So then I played one episode. I think it was 117 it was. And then I was like, okay, these guys are good. I'm not just saying that because I'm in front of you. I'm just saying that because, okay, they digested and showed this idea that, it could be as simple as this. And I understood it. I'm like, okay, this is quite exciting. I think it was the episode relating to the ant mentality.
Oh, right.
And I was like, okay, maybe I should really go back to episode 1. I've got 2 hours one way, 2 hours back. So, I can digest a lot of information. It really started from there. And I mean, it was transformational, to be honest with you.
Can you help us better understand how that transformation has occurred for you, like pre-listening to the podcast and post? What does that transformation actually look like?
Yeah, sure. I think if we go back to when I was a kid, I mean, the teenager in Australia, my mom was a bit of a saver and my dad, on the other hand, were a spender. So money wasn't really talked about. I knew that mom was talking about, okay, this is how much dad makes, this is how much we spend, and whatever else is left is what we save. And that really was the theme throughout my, I'd say 26, 27 years. So I think that shifting mindset was really what brought me about to my saving regime throughout the years. And it was only up until the time when I met my now wife that said, okay, I need to get serious now. We need to save for our future. And then after the podcast, I was just like, oh, these guys are onto something. And this is back when, the federal election was happening, and we were trying to figure out what's the best way to buy a property. And, we're no experts. We didn't know what we were doing. So we were like, we work in the professional services area. I think the best way to do it is get an expert. And then after listening to the podcast, we said, okay, we should really get some help in this. And that's why we engaged a mortgage broker. We planned for a lot of the forecasting of it, and that accounting that planned sabbatical. So I think for me, and one of the key statements that I really worked on in the mindset, and Ben, you know this, it's imperfect action beats perfect inaction. And that really was my mindset for quite a lot of things, and said, okay, if we want to do this, we've got to do this now. We've got to plan for this now. And that shifting mindset and understanding, okay, this is how much we make, this is how much fixed expenses we have, what's the best way to increase that net surplus every month. And that really was the theme. And even today, coming off that sabbatical, that was a really important piece, because a lot of people who we told that we've taken the sabbatical, whilst not only bought a property back in May 2019, had a career break and also a wedding. That's a huge expense, a huge commitment. And a lot of people are like, did you win the lotto or something? Is there something that you're not telling us? I'm like, no, it's just planning. It's just common sense to, we didn't jump and gun-ho this sabbatical. We planned for this. We ensured that just in case we don't find a job straight away, we made sure that we're covered for the next 6 to 8 months.
And it's interesting, right? I mean, obviously with your skill set, Keno, in regards to chartered accounting and the numbers tell the story, you really are making the invisible visible, right? And so you get to work on businesses and forecast their money and so forth. So did that give you some more confidence yourself, as opposed to someone who may not be coming from a numbers background, who's going to do the same thing as you? What sort of advice would you give them if they don't know the numbers as intimately as maybe you do, or not have comfort around the numbers? What else is there in the podcast or in what you've learned that would help them get to the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a good point, Ben. And I've got that advantage that I work with businesses and allowed me to understand the numbers. I mean, both my missus and I, we're accountants. We understood numbers. So for us to be able to see those numbers, we were able to plan. Now, coming back to the question, how a non-financial person understand this? I mean, we have a lot of clients that are non-financial people, and we say to them, just treat it like a business. Treat your household like a business. Understand what's coming in, what's coming out, and at the end of the month, really, you should be making a profit. That's the idea behind it. And really deep dive and understand what are the expenses. And I think that's a lot of people's mistakes. I'm by no means perfect. I've had my mistakes. I had the first 5 years of my career where I literally said, how come my saving balance isn't going up? It's because I didn't understand those little things where you tap and go, tap and go, tap and go. That's where the leakage happens. And I think that's the most important thing for a non-financial person to understand, is that those minor things are the ones that really get you at the end of the day.
How do you manage your money now, Keno, in terms of with Money Smarts as a backdrop? How are you seeing the money flow in your household now that you're married?
Yeah. So I am, like I said, an accountant. So I utilize technology. One of them being an accounting software. I won't say the name, but it's a cloud-based accounting software. And both my wife and I understand that software. So we said, okay, let's link our bank accounts to this software. We know what comes in, what comes out. We categorize it and implement that Money Smart system more so on the electronic side of things. Okay, we say, okay, which ones are lifestyle and living expenses, which ones are household bills, and really understand and get go. And we now have what we call finance night, and we get these quite a lot by our family members. Like, what's finance night? It's pretty much the same thing as Money Smart's monthly checkup, where we literally at the end of the month we say, okay, this is how much we make, how much it came out, and compare that to the month prior and the month prior. The great thing about my missus, she's quite into detail, and she actually fact checks me and just says, hey, how come our groceries went up $50 this month? Like, what do we do? what do we do wrong? I'm like, well,
right there. Nice.
Yeah,
that's good.
So it really also helps that you've got a partner who's on that same mindset with me as well. In saying that, she finds it a bit difficult at this stage because we do have that same joint bank account and we have the same 7-day float that we do. So she finds it very, very hard at this stage in time to say, hey, how do I save up and buy you a gift for your birthday or for Christmas? How can I hide that from you? Well,
it's pretty simple. It's an ad hoc, expense that you provision for, right? Under your holiday budget or your presents budget. Can I ask you a quick question? Before the money management system, what system were you running? Did you have a system at all that was rules-based, or what were you doing prior?
So prior to that, I used Scott Pape's bucket system. It didn't really work out in my point of view because I still have that habit of mine where I dip into my savings.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly the mindset, having that 7-day float and saying, okay, having that top to bottom approach what is it that I spend on a yearly basis, and really work myself downwards
Yep.
from a monthly basis and understand, okay, what can I provision using that amount?
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, so what is the plan for the future for you then? So how did that sort of help you end up where you want to be?
Sure. There was no vision, I tell you, to be honest with you. There was no plan. We were kind of just winging it as it went. And I knew property was an important aspect of that. And my mum, back in '04, she bought her own property, and she said, property is the key, and you need to ensure that you buy your own property and really leverage off that. And that's where, after the podcast, the vision happened. Okay, I told my wife, Mel, I said, Mel, when do you want to retire? How much do you want to retire with? And she's like, what are you talking about? We're just getting married. Why are you talking about retirement already? That's 30, 40 years down the track. And I said, well, if you think about it, that will just go by quickly. And I've spoken to a lot of people within that age group because they're my clients. And I asked them, how quickly did it go by? 40 years. They were like, in a blink of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
And that really came about the vision. Okay, we're like, okay, we need to plan this now. We need to ensure that at 60 or less than 60, that we can retire comfortably and allow us to do what we want to do, which is ultimately financial freedom. And then that really was the key vision for us right now.
And as you were going through that process, what were some of the big rocks in the jar that were going to be important to you, and how easy was it for you and Mel to get alignment on some of those ideas, i.e. starting a family or whatever that looked like for you? Was it easy, or were there some difficult conversations as well?
How did you resolve the ones where you weren't in alignment?
Numbers tell the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, it's coming back to Mel being the same mindset and being that accountant as well, that made it a bit easier having that conversation. In the very beginning of our relationship, we already had these conversations now, and part of the planning and the forecasting was starting a family, and that's one of the big rocks in the jars. And I know Mel would love to start a family soon, and I said, okay, what's the best way to do that whilst also investing in property? So part of the forecasting included, okay, how many kids do you want?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, well, we've talked about this. We want 2. And then because both of us were accounting, and part of accounting really is risk management, and we're quite conservative in that, she said, let's plan for 3, just in case. Well, I was like, are you sure? She's like, yes, just plan for 3.
That's another $400,000.
Yeah.
0 and 18. Yeah, that's good.
Well, again, that's really conservative.
Yeah.
Conservative, which in case something does happen and the 3rd kid does come about. But it allowed us to really forecast and show, okay, if we have 3 kids, is it viable for us to retire at a certain point in time? What are the things that we need to buy in terms of capital growth, investment return, and things like that. So I think that mindset, and also that conversation as well, I'm very lucky, to be honest with you, to have that partner who really agrees with those things, right? So yeah, I mean, big rocks in the jar. I wish.
Come on, was there any that you sort of butted heads on that you had to resolve, or was it all pretty smooth sailing?
I think that family bit was the bit. I'm a bit like, oh, you really want to have a 3rd kid?
Yeah.
That's very expensive. And she's like, yeah, we'll just model it. We'll just model it. We'll see how it goes.
No.
If it doesn't work, let's scale back to 2. I'm like, okay, fine, fair enough. And then it worked somehow. 3rd kid worked.
And are you investing, or are you buying? Tell me a bit about the owner-occupied.
Yeah, so we currently bought our place back in May 19. We actually exchanged contracts, a week before the federal election, would you believe? So, I mean, that's really what's the risk behind it. And we were getting married, so we've got nothing to lose. We had parents hounding us saying, just buy one. Yeah. But in saying that as well, I've implemented what the couch really, really preach, which is, the fundamentals of property investing. And that's where the plan came in as well. And I wasn't really sure at the beginning of our property journey what number are we really looking at? Like, how much is our budget? How much is it that we can buy so that we're not stretched too much?
So tell us about what you applied in the A of asset selection. What were some of the things that you learnt from the couch that you've decided, or when you were doing your research, what did you?
Yeah, sure. I think there's two answers to that, Ben. Is there was a lot of compromise on that.
Yep.
Primarily because, the couch really preached a lot of older styled apartments.
Yep.
Whereas my wife didn't like the older style apartments.
There's some compromise right there. Yeah.
So I really had to compromise and said, okay, we can't buy off the plan. That's no go.
Yeah.
No way. And she's like, okay, that's fine, but I want something fairly new. I'm like, okay, fine, no problem. Let's look into fairly new apartments. And the main fundamentals of asset selection for us was location. We ended up buying a place in Gladesville, which is about 10 kilometers out of the CBD.
Great. Yep.
And it was an apartment. It's not on the lower density side of things, but it was in the medium density. So it's a compromise, you could say.
The rules in Sydney are a little bit different too because of the higher density. So 1 in 3 roughly live in medium high density. In Melbourne, 1 in 4, and in Brisbane, 1 in 5. So there's a huge disparity around that, which plays into it. But I think so we don't want to be off the plan. We just want to be the second and subsequent purchaser. So that's number one. So that was a tick for you. We want some scarcity. So the block that you bought in had some, like, it's smaller in number. And then you were buying at market value as well, which is good. And then I guess culturally as well, we find that people with your background tend to still want that medium density, and they still want the newer stuff. So it's also serving as an owner occupied asset as well. So it's not just all. We always say if you lived in a vacuum, then you could tick off every single one of these things and get it done. But if you're getting for us, we'd like you to get 95% of it right, but locations could be one of them, and secondly, you've got to make sure you don't buy into oversupply. Sounds like you've negotiated those waters pretty well.
Did you know what the historical sales performance of the property was, Keno?
So the properties actually was built back in 2018, so they just opened up in early 2019.
Yep.
And I understood, this is what the real estate agent's selling point was, that the previous off-the-plan buyer couldn't afford the difference between the bank valuation and what they've signed, which was $850, I believe it was, and I got it for $720.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's another example of buying off the plan at $850 and the bank values it up at $720. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, it was great for us, but I feel bad for the other person who actually signed that off the plan.
And have you been watching the market in your area in terms of post-election, and are you noticing the bounce?
Yeah, actually. So again, we're very lucky to exchange contracts a week before the federal election, and I mean, part of that's luck as well. Like, everyone was saying that the Labor government was going to win, right? So when Liberal was like won, we're like, what's going on? What's going to happen? And then here we are, 4 months later, 5 months later. I mean, we've had one of the highest increases in a month in October, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, Keno, tell me, why is a podcast a medium that's good for you to consume content versus books, videos, other sort of mediums? Why are you a consumer of content on podcasts? Yeah,
so it's just personal preference. I've never been a book person. I did read your books, by the way, so both of them. Don't worry.
Oh. Well, as long as you got something out of them.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
If they just took 3 hours of your time or 4 hours of your time, we apologise.
Well, it helped me a lot. Finance and mindset-wise. I mean, podcast was the medium for me because I usually catch buses. Peak hour in Sydney is 40 minutes one way. It really was the easiest way for me to listen and understand. I could do chores while listening to a podcast, so I can multitask in that front. And podcast for me, it feels like someone's reading the book to me, right? So Ben and Bryce, you're reading the book to me. So that's the easiest way for me to digest it. And it allows me to go back as well and say, okay, I might have missed something that Bryce said in terms of mindset. Rewind, and keep replaying that and really, really absorb that.
Keno, what does it feel like to know you're in your 30s, right?
Yes.
What does it feel like to know that you have the foundations of money and your future plan? What does that actually feel like to know that you can just get on with living, not having to worry about what a lot of people have to worry about?
Yeah.
Is wondering how they're going to pull it all together.
Well, you could say, yeah. I mean, you could say I'm lucky, to be honest with you. But in saying that, both my wife and I are planners. So there's a lot of things that we have to think about in terms of certain things, sudden events that we really have to plan around. And, I'm by no means perfect. I've had my mistakes the past few years, and being at an age right now, 30, really to know what our numbers were gives me that comfort and understanding. At least we've got some guidelines and some sort of basis as well to work on. And then really, if something does happen on the side, then at least we can react to it and be proactive. Really is the point here.
So tell me a bit about your plan. So sort of some of the key milestones and how many properties and what you and Mal are looking to achieve on this journey.
Yeah. So part of that plan was for me to retire in 33 years, so 63, whereas Mel would retire at 59.
Yep.
And that would entail a 60,000 per year for each of us, 120 per the book.
Massive. Yep.
In terms of the investment property, they modeled 2 investment properties, which is quite surprising, to be honest with you. We said, are you sure it's only 2? And they were like, yeah, it's 2, definitely 2. We're like, okay, let's try that. And it really was that modeling bit that really opened our eyes and said, okay, this is the assets that you really have to look out for. And
when's the first purchase due? When's the next one for you?
The next one is 2023. So in 4 years time.
And that's obviously because the reason why it's 2, people might be wondering, why is it 2? It's usually got to do with 3 kids. So it's about the timing of where we can get the lending appropriately. So usually the LVRs are pretty good, but it's around making sure that we can support those. And were we going public or private school in the model?
So primary school would be private, and then secondary would be public.
Oh, other way around. So
yes, other way around.
Okay, so give them the good foundations, but then basically that's clever. That's really clever. So we've got that plan. We're coming into obviously a target figure. What was some of the real one we just heard a second ago, which was really only 2, and we've also got to be mindful for the listeners, is that that's in combination with your super, and we're talking about both of you working in professional careers.
And 33 years.
And 33 years for that to happen. So those are also playing into factor. What we want to make sure people don't get misled by the fact that $120,000 being just generated from 2 properties. No, it's a combination of that and the super and your investments that are being built up as you accumulate them. And then in pension phase, it's that passive income along with the drawdowns of super that are going to be part of that story for you. Yeah, that's good. So were there any other sort of aha moments when you started to get visibility as you were building the scenarios?
I think it's mostly the modeling behind it was, okay, how much is it in real terms? I think that was the aha moment.
Value versus,
I was asking, are we able to understand how much would it be at today's dollars?
Yeah.
And then, working backwards, one of the investment property was roughly about 680, I believe it was. And in real terms, it was 450. And that's spanning back, 4 years. 10 years. So that was just like, whoa, is that really real? Yes.
Can you get a property for 450 or is it, in 10 years time from there? Yeah. But that's part of that, making sure you get visibility on that. And I think that's part of the same as, if I was engaging you to do some accounting work for the business and doing some models about maybe expansion or whatever it looks like. It's like, can that really happen? Can I really get that? And what assumptions you're using and using your skill sets to be able to make that a reality. So that's really insightful for me.
Ken, what would you say to people who are sort of thinking, oh, the planning, you're probably not the right guy to ask this because planning's so part of your DNA, right? But, someone's sort of thinking, do I really need to plan? There's too many variables? Can't I just get in the market and buy? What advice would you give them as to whether they should consider both, when considering both of those options?
Well, when we actually, before the plan, and it was actually my birthday and it was Christmas as well, I told to Mel, don't get me any presents, but I want you to come with me to this plan. I mean, she said, okay, how much would it be? And then I said, this dollars. She's like, are you crazy? Why? And I said, well, if you think about it, cost versus benefit. Do you have any idea how much we're going to buy? Do you want to know if we're going to be outstretched? And really it was the cost versus benefit analysis where, okay, it's this dollar amount, but if we make a mistake down the track and it'll cost us double that amount, triple that amount, isn't it a bit logical for us to invest right now and make no mistakes down the track? And she said, okay, let's give it a try.
And I mean, it's a little bit easier when you guys charge professional fees for the work you do as well to sort of, bring conclusion to that story. But I think it really is a really powerful message for those people. It's what's the cost of no action and what's the cost of getting it wrong, and unfortunately, you just told us the story of the $850 off the plan that then valued up at $720, and they didn't have the equity to support that, so they've foregone their deposit. And in that case, if it's 10%, if they pay 10%, that's $85,000 mistake. So for the investment of a few $1,000s to save on that, that's a 10x plus. Sort of outcome. So that I think that's good feedback.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's close the loop. You talked about your mum sort of crying at night saying, have we made the right decision? Let's fast forward to 2019. You're obviously well and truly settled in Australia. What does that look like now, and how does your mum reflect on that decision that your mum and your dad bravely made at the time as to what life looks like now? Has it fulfilled to the way they wanted it to be?
Absolutely. We couldn't ask for a better opportunity here in Australia. And mum's property in North Ryde, she bought it for $320. It's probably triple that value right now, I'll tell you that. So no, she's definitely cheering on that front. And she's also glad the opportunities that my siblings and I have gotten here in Australia. And we're really glad that in hindsight, even though we protested that we shouldn't go to a new country because we've made friends here, for them to sacrifice all that for us, I mean, I couldn't ask for a better future.
The next time you see her, give her a big hug and say thanks, Mum.
I will.
Thanks for sticking it out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I was just going to say on that because I find your parents unbelievably courageous, because I'm a Perth boy who lives in Melbourne, well, just outside of Melbourne, but I moved into a country that still speaks the same language, still has the same culture. I just recently made a decision to move my family to a lifestyle location for the benefit of my youngest son, and I question that at times. And so it's nice hearing stories of your parents, because, mate, they changed culture, they changed language, they changed skill set, they changed perceptions, they changed discrimination.
Absolutely.
All those things. They are just legends, your parents. So
Yeah, thank you very much for putting your hand up to come on the show. When you were thinking about coming on the show, this is an opportunity for you to share some of the takeaways that you'd want our audience and community to listen for you. So do you want to share some tips or some advice of what you've learned and what you've put into action?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I think the sabbatical was a key part of this as well, was the planning. And one of the statements that you mentioned lately, Ben, was consequences, trade-off, and delayed gratification. And that sabbatical was that piece, you could say, because the key takeaway for us, for Mel and I, was to plan that sabbatical. A lot of people and my peers said, are you crazy? Why are you doing this? No, we were technically meant to work until we retire. I'm like, well, if you actually plan for it, you can take that sabbatical. Now, it wasn't perfect. We've had consequences where, we didn't have any money coming in. We had trade-offs where we couldn't really travel because we had this, war chest we had to last us a number of months. and also that delayed gratification where, yes, we're married, but we can't buy a car yet because we have to, think about the opportunity cost of this war chest that we have and put it in an offset account to reduce the interest throughout the number of months we're going to be off work. So I think the key takeaways is to really understand your numbers, and it's a bit mute coming from a chartered accountant, but really treat your household like a business. And once you know what comes in and what comes out, and if you see that there's a deficit, then you're seriously doing something wrong and really need to understand what's the best way to reduce that and turn it into a profitable business if your mindset isn't there.
That's good advice.
Brilliant. Great advice.
People don't see it like that. So.
What did you get up to for your sabbatical?
So I left in May, and that was planning my wedding till June. So June I had my wedding, and then 2 weeks after that was my honeymoon to Hawaii. Then straight after that, we settled on our property. So we furnished our property in mid-June. Yeah. And within August to September, we were trying to figure out what we want to do during the day.
So, this whole work thing gives us purpose.
Yeah, it really was. And for me, it was a hard change because I had purpose for a number of years where I come into work, come in, get paid, and that. Yeah. But if I had the opportunity to do a sabbatical again, I'd do it in a heartbeat, to be honest with you. It really refreshes your view on a lot of things. I went to another industry now, and which I really love, and same with my wife. If anyone out there who listens to this, if you think about sabbatical, just plan it. You got really nothing to lose at the end of the day.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, Stiggy was off the side of the camera there, just planning her sabbatical. So not sure that was a timely advice.
Maybe okay. We'll tick that off. But anything further than that, that's outrageous.
All right, let's hope she cuts this bit out. But we're in big trouble. But hey, that's terrific. You've been really transparent. What Ben and I have learn over the 300 odd, or the 250 odd episodes that the 250 plus episodes that we've done is that we were probably early days trying not to sort of fluff pillows about the impact of the podcast and the planning and all those sorts of things, but we have learned over time that our audience likes listening to other people and learning what they've done, and so you've been really transparent and open, and that's that I think that's only going to benefit other people because they might pick that bit out of it, or the sabbatical, or the planning for the holidays, and all the let's be conservative with 3 children and all those sorts of things. So there's something in it for everyone, and you've been really brave to share it.
Lots of proof. That's what we love.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on the Property Couch, and thanks most of all for finding us on the way to the Blue Mountains.
No, thank you. I really appreciate your time, and thank you to Ivis as well. Even though you're in the background, Ivis, you're a very instrumental key piece.
We're a trio, not a duo, but Ben and I usually get the front of the bus stuff. But she's definitely a big part of what we do. But thanks for coming on again. Say hi to Mel for us, and hopefully we get to meet her one day.
Will do. Thanks, gents.
Mate, talk about
numbers are their game.
Yes.
Very, very clear.
Run the household through zero.
Yeah, run the household. And I tell you what, and they are a bit like me. It is a little bit of a business. It's a house that you need to remember to always spend less than you earn. So your business is solvent, not insolvent.
Sorry, Ben, say that again. Spend less than you earn.
Spend less than you earn, Bryce.
That's novel.
I know, it's crazy.
It hasn't been since the Paul Clitheroe days of money.
There we go. So I love that part of the story. Big story, big change. Parents took a big risk to come to Australia.
How good are these parents? Yeah. There was so much in that interview, but personally, because I've moved around with my kids a lot, I just think that just moving in another country, cultural challenges, maybe language,
wasn't easy. They thought at one point they'd made a mistake, but they soldiered on.
Build a statue of those parents now.
Now they're, Keno
and an encouragement to anyone else who's listening to our podcast who's in similar circumstances. They've come to Australia in search of this wonderful lifestyle that we have.
And made good and are adding value and still aspirational to even increase the legacy that they're going to pass on to the next generation and the next generation beyond. So Great story. Lots
Sabbatical
of story.
was nice. There was a finance date night. There was everything in that. So, folks, that's a little shout out to the detailed folk.
Yep.
Ben, just
Well,
to show.
I go on about it, Bryce, about making the invisible visible. I think it's really important because those people who do understand numbers, the numbers have still got to tell a story. You've still got to provide insight, because if you don't have clarity on the numbers, for a lot of people, they won't take that action word, which is what we want to see happen. So when you do a plan, which is what they did, they basically put their plan into action and they had confidence. Okay, so they moved in regards to, they could, he said we could take the sabbatical because of exactly that. We actually saw and we
30,000 foot view.
Measured out our cash flows and we know that we went backwards, but we still felt comfortable. And that's set them in good stead in terms of now the jobs that they've got, the opportunity that they're going to look at, and so they're still on plan. So I love that story for them.
Bravo, well done, Keno and Mel. Thank you for sharing your story. It's very, I love it when people are brave enough to come on here, Ben, and share with our community, because it's intimidating to come on and talk to an audience of strangers who you're being transparent and you don't know them. So brave, courageous, and inspirational. So well done, Keno. Thanks for coming on. Thanks to Mel too for allowing that story to be shared. And as we continue this summer series, Ben, until next week.
Well, I hope we're inspiring as many people as possible to take action, because remember, Bryce, knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
Jeez, you've got some wisdom, mate. See you next week, folks. Hey there, folks. Bryce Holdaway here. Before you go, if you're new to our community and only listened to maybe a handful of episodes, I thoroughly recommend that you go all the way back to episode number 1, where we unpack all of the foundations when it comes to property investing. Now, for those of you that might be a little bit time poor, I've got good news for you. We have a binge guide that you can download straight away, which summarises the first 20 episodes where Ben and I unpack the foundational pillars of the A, B, C, D, and so much more. And you can get that straight away. If you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20, you can download it and consume it whenever you want. It's completely free and available now. And for those of you, just a quick reminder that nothing we've spoken about today constitutes financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before acting on any information. Now don't forget, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and get your binge guide today.